welcome back to Critical Hit. I'm Matthew.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm David.
And today we're talking about Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind to continue this year's Month-a-zaki. So Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind is one of Miyazaki's oldest films, actually, and it's pretty good. It's about a post-apocalyptic world where this bug-naturey death force has taken over the world, and Nausicaa is trying to figure out, the main character, she's a princess of the Valley of the Wind, and she's trying to figure out a way to commune with nature without both either nature or humanity or both being mutually destroyed. So it's overall it's pretty good. It's a little long movie, but I particularly really liked it. But what do you guys think, Kyle?
What's up?
Well, it's good. I mean, it's a little weird watching it because I saw it after I saw Princess Mononoke.
Yeah.
There's a lot of narrative similarities in the plot.
Yeah, they're really similar films overall, I would say.
Well, I mean, like, to the point where it almost felt like he was sort of doing Nausicaa 2.0 with Princess Mononoke.
Huh.
A little bit.
A little bit.
And,
there are different things about them, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. But that makes sense.
But yeah, and so, I mean, I liked it. I think that the pacing it's pretty leisurely paced.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I liked it. I really liked the art style. And I like, and you know, I love Princess Mononoke, so it makes sense to like this too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I mean, overall, I liked it, but it's fairly slow.
Yeah, it's a slow movie.
I think that's part of the fact. I don't know if it's aged as well as some of his other stuff.
Yeah,
and you can see that a little bit in the pacing. And you can definitely hear it when you listen to the soundtrack.
So some of the soundtrack, like
it's the main theme and such is fantastic, but there are just a couple of scenes in there where it sounds like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Well, it's almost any action scene gets that weird like 80s vibe going.
Very heavy on the synth.
Yeah,
well, it's the kind of movie that it's like two 80s for the 80s almost.
A little bit, yeah.
But like other scenes, like the slow pacing scenes, is some really phenomenal music though.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it's very
much more like
Hisashi's
normal stuff.
Yeah, very slow paced. Very weird in that sense. For a sci-fi post-apocalyptic world, it takes its sweet time.
It does. Part of that, I mean, some of those desert scenes really have a Dune feel, and it kind of feels a bit like that sort of Dune pacing, and a lot of that older kind of sci-fi that you had.
Well, I think it also comes along in the art, because a lot of the scenes are all about like setting up. So like the scenes will open up with these like great shots of like the room, like her room underground, or like walking through the jungle, where before like really setting the characters doing them dialogue.
Yeah, let me say something about I really enjoyed the art in this. It did a good job of constantly grabbing your attention, and not because it was simply one new landscape or something, or a very interesting place to play around in. It could be anything that they started the scene out with. It could be the armor in the corner of the room.
Oh yeah.
Or just how the giant bug looks in this scene, or it just did a... Constantly, you were being given these cool, fantastic visuals that only work in a world like this.
The visuals are phenomenal, and I would say if you're going to, like, if you need a reason to watch this movie, that alone is reason enough, because the art is just beautiful.
Well, I mean, like, one criticism you could make of Princess Mononoke that you can't do this is that Princess Mononoke, it's more of like a traditional medieval, Asian setting. That's not this at all. Like, this has one of the most unique settings in any real, like, sci-fi.
It really is, though. The jungles themselves are really, really cool with the upper layers and the fossilized lower layers are just awesome.
It also avoided the sort of the Star Wars thing to do, which is one planet, one kind of environment.
There are tons of environments in this movie.
This you have forest, you have the underforest, you have
the desert,
civilizations,
the valley,
different kinds of cities, and
And one thing I really like about the art in this movie is that the way it'll set up scenes to tell the story. So like this movie does do show and tell a lot, but first it always like shows you the information about the area you're in before it tells you the significance of it. So like you when she takes Lord Yupa underground and shows him the secret room with all the pure water and stuff, the movie doesn't explain any of that until well after the scene begins.
No, it shows you that there's all of these plants growing here and they look different, and you feel the life before it has to be explained to you.
But that's how the storytelling happens like throughout the movie. I kind of like, even the beginning of the movie is you get the feeling of the area before you understand, oh, there's this poison in the air. Before they even explain the premises of the movie, you have this guy walking around in the poison, and he's looking at dead bodies and destroyed cities. And it just does a really good job of like the scenery itself does a really good job of setting the stage.
Something that's interesting about that, though, with a particular part of the art is normally when you're telling one of these nature is good, be careful of civilization and all of this production and whatnot, you get very beautiful everything having to do with nature.
Yeah.
And this movie decided that instead we were going to have gigantic, sometimes horrific-looking bug creatures everywhere.
Very almost Lovecraftian in the way that their eyes are just
and
massive.
the tentacles coming out of there.
Yeah.
And I think it actually really speaks to the film's strengths because usually it's very hard in film to take something really fundamentally gross or ugly and make it seem really likable.
Yeah.
And yet this movie actually really accomplishes
without being cartoony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And normally it's Wally has a pet cockroach. We'll make it act like a dog.
Yeah. But it doesn't do that either. Like it makes you.
It's creepy.
It's through the story. It really makes you believe that this this is good.
And it makes more sense too with like the universe itself. So like when in that one scene where all the bugs are underwater and they surface above or and surround the humans, everyone freaks out except for Nausicaa. Yeah. And all the humans get worried because Nausicaa approaches them and starts talking to them peacefully. And everyone else is like, "What are you doing? This is crazy." Because to Nausicaa, she understands that there's a way to commune with nature that everyone else only see the outside, the exoskeleton of these bugs, and they just see it as horrendous and hideous, and they treat it as such. Yeah. Where she tries to reach out and talk to these things, even though they're so bizarre and foreign to her, like they're otherworldly. It's really cool, but there's a good point that like everything about nature in this movie is not good looking. Yeah, like it's creepy. Yeah, but I do think that the movie does a really good job of demonstrating through its nature human communication. Like it's an interesting movie where like you said earlier when we were talking about this movie, Kyle. You mentioned once how you think like this movie doesn't. It's not just about humans and nature, but the nature does something else too. Do you want?
Yeah. Actually, when you're looking at this movie, I was surprised because I was reminded of Starship Troopers, which is
that's
very very different.
Yeah,
but it's giant bug creatures that everyone's afraid of with telepathic abilities, kind of a thing. And just with that, it's just this exploration similar to what Starship Troopers did. But whereas Starship Troopers did, it's the other, it's different, I hate it, let's kill it. This is the only way we can survive. The only way we can actually survive is by recognizing that the other is not so different from you and I. And that's what you have in this movie. In the very beginning, Lord Yupa, who is the guy who's out scouting everywhere he goes, we hear that he saw one of the Ohm insects pick up what he thought was a human child. Turns out it was the little fox squirrel thing that he
it's
gives
like
to
her little sidekick throughout the movie.
Little squirrel fox squirrel, I forget which one. But there's this concern there for the human child. He was really concerned for a human baby. Later on, at the very end of it, the way that they lure the Ohm is by taking one of the Ohm babies and like hooking it up there and
the Ohm all freak out
and they freak out and they do everything they can and it's the Russians love their children too kind of thing. It's the idea that the other also has this concern and you respect that about them.
Well, it sort of harkens back to them making you care about the Ohm and the nature and something repulsive by showing a commonality under the surface.
Yeah. Even when you look at her father sick in bed, there's his old armor that once he could fill is harkening back to the Ohm who just shed his skin and left that exoskeleton there.
Yeah, and the movie does a lot of that where like the Ohm even make mistakes, like human mistakes, like when they're angry they attack Nausicaa at the end, right? And then you see them recover from that and apologize in a way.
And I think there's a message that even though that we're different from much of nature, we're still a part of it.
Yeah. But along those lines, I think it'd be good to talk about Princess Mononoke and Nausicaa the Valley of the Wind, because they're very similar. Sure. Princess Mononoke came out 10 years, give or take, later.
Wow.
But, okay. I do agree that I see a lot of similarities, like there's the humans versus nature and stuff like that. But I don't know, like, what do you guys think? Like, what would you say are big, like, differences or significance between the two movies?
I would say that, as far as characters who commune with nature, Nausicaa is very different from Mononoke. Mononoke is in the midst of nature, and you kind of realize that there's something wrong about her because of it. Yeah, she doesn't stay out of it. Whereas Nausicaa respects a certain degree of boundaries here, and while she's able to harmonize with nature, learn from it, take from it, she coexist with it. She still lives with the humans. She goes there, she visits, she's respectful, but she recognizes herself as other.
Well, I mean, they're two fundamentally different characters. They just don't have really the same role in the story.
No.
If anything, Nausicaa reminds me way more of Akitasha?
Yeah.
Akitasha in Princess Mononoke.
Exactly, yeah. Because it's more of an ambassador role.
Yeah, and just that striving to communicate to everyone, and, like, going out of their way to communicate to everyone on different sides. Like, both characters talk to their enemies quite a lot, and try to reason with them, even when those enemies are blinded by rage.
Well, and then there are also the characters who are able to cut through simply seeing that enemy as the bad guy, and sees a bit of that humanity and where the motivation is, because, again, that's the beauty of a Miyazaki villain, is that very few of them are just, I'm evil now.
Yeah. Well, they're all humans. I think you have a good point in saying, like, they draw out the humanity.
Yeah.
Because, like, in Nausicaa, for example, the crazy general from Tomikia, she is very warlike, but after talking with Nausicaa, becomes very different. Like, to the point where she says, like, if you see Nausicaa, don't shoot. I want to talk to her again.
Yeah.
And so you see that, like that interesting, like, scenes, and you see that, I would say, also with Ashitaka, where they draw out the humanity and encourage you to think outside of anger and outside of violence. But I do think they both have, like, very different messages about how you actually deal with it.
At the same time, they never jump ship fully into the camp of their adversaries, because they're recognizing the value that is held on multiple sides of the issue.
Yeah.
For me, I think Mononoke might be the stronger movie, if only because it's managed to find its pacing very well. And while it might not grab with as many visuals, it managed to create more of a holistic environment that I think worked very well.
But I would say that the environments in this movie are way more broad, and that kind of makes it beautiful too.
Yeah.
Where, like, nature in this movie is almost everything, but in Mononoke it's almost just that forest. Where the gods exist.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, like, in the last thing I would say, though, is that in Princess Mononoke, whenever humans entered the forest, they were, like, almost trespassing on sacred ground. And there was almost, like, this point where you have this, like, the right thing to do is to have a respectful distance from nature.
Yeah.
By the end of it. Like when we correct our wrongs that we've made in nature, and then we kind of we have peace with it and stay away. Whereas in Nausicaa, like, almost the right thing to do would be to live underneath the forest.
Yeah.
To let nature kind of rule over you, or adapt your culture to what nature's mandating. And that's really interesting, because those are actually different messages. And I don't know... I wouldn't notice that the first time I saw either movie. But watching them both recently, just, like, I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Nausicaa?
It's a good, different kind of sci-fi piece.
Yeah.
If you just want to see how you can mix sci-fi and fantasy in an interesting way, this is a good one that does it in kind of a low magic setting and a low tech setting. And so it keeps a bit of that, it keeps something of the epic fantasy.
Yeah. While
at the same time exploring, you know, a very 80s sci-fi tone that goes on here. And it's, if you're a fan of either one of those traditions, you should enjoy something of this. If you like both, you're in for a real treat.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me. I mean, don't watch it expecting something super riveting or you know, super well paced. But otherwise, yeah, I think that the setting's fascinating. The story is still very good, so I think it's definitely
characters are fantastic.
Yeah. It's a slower movie for sure. Like, I couldn't watch it over again. Like, I could watch other Studio Ghibli movies. Like, I could watch Up on Poppy Hill, like, again and again. But this one, like, it's just like it kind of drags. But
it's also not the Miyazaki movie you want to show to a kid, because
it's pretty dark.
It's dark. It's also a little bit too slow paced. And
it'd be hard to
right.
Yeah, that's fair. But for me, like, I would say it's a really good movie. For his early work too, it's really nice to see where he's starting with, and it's a great one to start looking at those major themes of Miyazaki, like communication, nature, pacifism, flight. It just covers all those so well, and you see him so clearly in the story. And the last thing I would say is, like, along the lines of Princess Mononoke, if you like Princess Mononoke, you'd like Nausicaa. If you like Nausicaa, you'd like Princess Mononoke. So, like, they're really good to watch together in that regards. But yeah, no, it's worth seeing, but it's a little it's a little harder to watch than other ones. All right, guys, thank you for joining us. Next time we'll be watching Castle in the Sky.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, talk to you later.